fine. Bad bitches, every city in my tribe. Look behind. Booty dominate the world, peaches ripe.
Kaden, it sounded like you were pro-choice, not someone who's.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello. Good. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to say I really support your channel and your content. I'm actually a sexual health
Thank you.
educator.
Oh,
so,
really?
yeah, so right now I do sexual health education with adults who are on the autism spectrum who are specifically going to life and vocational skills colleges. So that's my specialty right now. But now I'm going to go into sexual violence prevention. So I'm transitioning.
Wow. Good for you.
Thank
So,
you.
can I ask you a little
Yep.
bit of about your profession? So,
Yeah.
um, what information? Man, that's so interesting. What information do you really like? Would you say is the basis of what you talk about with your clientele?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so with my students, what I usually start with is physical touch and boundaries, just to give them a sensory input on how to respect people's spaces. Because a lot of times, students who are on the spectrum don't know how to navigate those boundaries. Uh, and that's just normal across the board. But this is actually a curriculum I use that is applicable to anyone outside of the spectrum, too. Just giving a concept of how to navigate physical spaces with people. It's just super important. And that's what sexual health is, which is just respecting people's autonomy and also trying to destigmatize sexuality. Because a lot of times, what I've noticed is people think of the word sexuality and they go straight to the word sex rather than just the social emotional component of connecting with people. So it's a whole destigmatization that goes on.
No, I'm glad you said that. I do have another guy that I really like to talk with who's actually an ex-Mormon, and he talked about how essentially states that really disallow any kind of sex education have higher rates of teen pregnancy, abortion, and sexual assault.
And not only just, well, yeah, I would say it's more than just sexual assault. And what I mean is it's sexual violence. So it's very much like the very subtle ways in which we break barriers down with other people or other students. Like I worked in a school system in Florida where I met a lot of kids, fourth and fifth graders who were expressing like pornographic ideas to each other. And no wonder we
Wow.
had incidences of trauma where students were just like I had one girl who didn't know how to vocalize how she was being hurt. So every time she would end lunch, she would just be the last one to leave the cafeteria, and she would just be crying. And the staff and the admins couldn't figure out why. So the counselor and I went over and we talked with her, and we found out that after every single lunch, somehow a little boy goes over and exposes himself to her, and it's
Oh,
just traumatizing,
wow. Yeah.
right? And so it's just like we don't talk often about how rape culture starts so early. It starts so early. It's a belief system that we are allowed to overpower people and dominate people right away, rather than connect and nurture with each other. It's just so silly. Like here in Minnesota, what was it last year? Is it September? I think Richfield, Minnesota, is a school district, and they had this big hoopla about a national standard, called Aaron's Law, and so there was some social workers who were just teaching basic sexual ed to, I want to say it was high schoolers, and parents were just up in arms because they were so upset that we were teaching them just how to navigate different spaces and understanding different people's attraction, including members of the LGBTQ community. So it's just like there's so much stigma around sexuality, but the double-edged sword is that we don't know how to end sexual violence.
I'm so glad you brought that up because
Yeah.
what I've learned kind of having these discussions is that there's so many lanes when it comes to kind of the ecosystem, even just
Yep.
around a pregnant person.
Yeah.
And I learned through my research that the number one maternal death in the United States is homicide, which is mainly related to domestic violence.
Right.
And
And that's
so,
my main like graduate research area was in domestic violence. And so I graduated with a couple of internships at a DV center. And I also had that experience where, as an advocate, so many, whether it's pregnancy or reproductive coercion or actually kids themselves, were used as a tool of violence.
yes, and that's what I say all the time is that criminalizing abortion would make it a tool of violence because essentially you're leaving someone powerless in a situation that they can be exploited. So there it's so multidimensional and I love talking to people with different lenses. Like my friend Legally Mormon, his lens changing of, getting married so young and having the religious aspect of it, and now you with like coming from an educator and seeing the troubles of implementing what seems like reasonable and sound policy into to children to, I think, have a better understanding not only of their self but of a healthier society. It's really
It's
like so much
mind-boggling that,
nuance I get every day. It's so interesting.
well, there's a, so here's another thing too. Um, there's something called desexualization, and it's a microaggression that a lot of people with disabilities experience. And essentially, it is the everyday subtle notion from non disabled people that they are not worthy of sexuality. They're not worthy of being seen as sexual human beings. Um, and the reason why that's important is just recognizing that we sort of have this power imbalance within our social scripts when it comes to sexuality, and we don't focus on just the basic necessity of accepting everyone, including ourselves, that we're sexual beings.
No, I felt
Like,
that way as a teenager. Yeah, absolutely.
we just have to start there. Like my curriculum, gosh, like I teach about like just touch circles or the way in which we organize other people in our lives or who we touch and don't touch. And then I go to like what's a healthy relationship, what's an unhealthy relationship, to like what's safe to do online or offline, what's public or private, or then we jump into like actual human reproduction. And I interlace it with gender and sexual orientations as well. And what's been amazing is that even though a lot of my students who tend to come from religious backgrounds, because unfortunately, students who can go to a private vocational school have lots of money from their parents, and they're usually religious. So their parents are very skeptical with sexuality, but the students respond so positively, and they love just being able to learn about themselves.
That's great. Wow. What an interesting field to be in. Good for you. Did you always set to do this, or you just kind of, you said you started in
Yeah,
domestic violence. I think it's
yeah.
so funny you're talking about making like your feeling good about your sexuality, and I can't tell you how many comments where I've seen like this man is fine. Like,
I've kind of like blushing just reading it because like I'm demisexual, so I never really get a whole lot of attention, and I usually feel a little like not uncomfortable, but like unsure what to do. So I blush a little bit.
adorable. Adorable. And I just had to highlight it.
I mean, I started off like my journey kind of is really interesting. Like the new job I'm taking now, which is a sexual violence prevention like advocate and coordinator. This has been a 10-year journey actually to get here. Um, I was a survivor of domestic violence 10 years ago as a college student. And then I was also, as what would we call it? Vicarious. I was a survivor of vicarious domestic violence. So I had this dual relationship where the person who I was dating was abusive towards me and mostly neglectful, but I also saw the abuse she was enduring from a previous relationship and it carried over. And my whole life goal was to like run for politics and run for office, but then it just got completely sidetracked. I had to go, whoa, what is this phenomenon? And I was just so lucky that I was studying about patriarchy as a political system. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I started putting the two together, and it just transformed my life. And I went and got my master's degree in social work, and I focused so much on domestic violence. It became my clinical specialty. So I do what's called feminist clinical social work practice. So it uses a feminist lens to provide social work services and therapy and interventions. And all of that came from experiencing violence. And now my life goal
Wow.
is to end violence.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's incredible. I would love to do like a co-host with you sometime and really talk more about this because I think it's so important. And even I'm 35. I even feel it like wasn't I like how kind of it's shifting in this new generation where I feel a lot of like sexuality liberation, and I wish there was more. I noticed with my son, we are talking more about identifying feelings and learning how to process them,
Yeah.
and saying it is okay to have these feelings. He's a little boy, so I'm also saying it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel hurt. Anger is not your only feeling. And I would really love you as an expert to kind of come in with your professional lens because I think it's such an important conversation to have.
Yeah, I would love to. That'd be awesome. I've been really trying to like get more involved in like expressing professional ideas on TikTok because everyone like I have such a it really makes me mad when people armchair, psychoanalyze other people and I'm just like, stop, stop this. Like, let's talk about the basics first. But anyways, I'd love to do that for sure.
Awesome. I gave you a follow, so if you follow me back, let's just set something up in messages, and then do a co-host because I would like to shift the conversation because I think this is an interesting lane to go down.
Yeah, it really is. And by the way, I do a lot of centering emotions in my work, so we can definitely talk about that too.
Yes, thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you joined.
Yeah, I kept like shadow watching your stream. I gotta like jump in and maybe I'll like, co-host or something, get some idiot who thinks abortion is murder. But we'll do that some other time.
No, we love a feminist man. Yes, I always tell everyone my son's gonna be a dope feminist man.
Hell yeah, he's gonna be dope.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Let's get that set up and let's do it soon. What is your first name?
So my first name is Aaron.
Aaron. Awesome. Aaron, my co-host of the day. Man, my conversation of the day. I love it.
All right, awesome. Well, I will message you on TikTok after this, so that way you can.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
We'll chat soon.
Yep. Bye.
I'm so fucking cute, bitch.